Welcome back. And joining me now is Ray Dalio, the founder of the world's largest hedge fund, Bridgewater Associates. I want to be very specific about what you mean. You're saying worse than recession. You're saying this is reminiscent of the 1930s. We should tell our viewers you correctly predicted the 2008 financial crisis. What is your prediction for where the country is headed right now?
One man's debt is another man's assets, bondholders. And so we're going to be in a situation where if that storehold of wealth is in jeopardy because there's too much supply and demand and so on, and we have a monetary inflation, we will have great disruptions. And that could be like the breakdown of the monetary system in 71. It could be like 2008. It's going to be very severe. I think it could be more severe than those if these other matters simultaneously occur.
A few things in there that I really did agree with. Deficits. He talks about deficits are currently at 7% of GDP. We need to get them under 3%, which is also the number that Warren Buffett once said that he suggested Congress should not get their salaries unless the budget deficit was less than 3% of GDP. I personally would rather have a surplus like we did have from in the late 90s for 2 years. But the devaluation was the thing he said that's going to be worse. He essentially said our dollars are going to be worth less. Well, no shit. Of course they're going to be worth less. That's what inflation is. One of the things he does talk about that we've talked about in this channel a lot is when there's an unequal supply and demand of our debt. You know, everybody wants our debt right now. But just like a frog in boiling water, at some point, the water gets hotter and hotter, and you don't really notice it until you finally notice it. And if you're the frog, it's too late. Just imagine what happens here. We have debt. As that debt grows, if our GDP doesn't grow in excess of the growth of that debt, eventually we will have debt that is so high, and people sit there and say, well, we'll just refinance it. Well, guys, if our debt's so high that it's not serviceable, then we have to increase our interest rates that we pay on the debt in order to get more debt. So if you're out there and you're a bondholder, you're sitting there saying, oh, you guys are selling me more debt. Oh, but wait, your debt levels are far worse than they used to be. This is scarier now. I need a higher interest rate for that risk. Well, with that high interest rate, now we're all of a sudden going to have higher interest payments on our government debt. Well, we've already been complaining about higher interest payments. Do you see how it goes? Let's say, for example, you were sitting there and you were paying your mortgage on your credit card. You're getting away with it for a while because you can manage the 2% a month on that extra $1,000. Oh, it's only $20 extra a month. Well, at some point, after X number of months, that becomes an insurmountable debt. That becomes way too difficult. And now you got to start going to the local bookie and start borrowing money from the local mob at 50% interest just to make your previous debt payments. Now, is this a worst case scenario? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. All I know is that the track record on our debt lately has been pretty tough. You sit there and you see increases in our debt and you see increases in interest rates, which is a big reason why a lot of people think Trump was trying to throw us in a recession so it can lower our interest payments on our debt. But with what's going on internationally with tariffs, I get it. You know, there's quotes being thrown out there by a guy I respect a lot, like Charlie Munger, who says our government revenue until 19 whatever was all on tariffs. That's not a justification for tariffs. Our economies are a lot different now than they were back then. You know, Ray Dalio in this video also talks about the inequity of wealth. I believe he was kind of hinting at that, to which I say, guys, we are at way better levels of wealth disparity than in many, many countries right now and in history. The poor people in our country have way more than they ever did in history. And if you don't see that, you're an idiot. If you don't see how the poor in this country have more, does that mean the wealthy aren't getting wealthier? Of course they're getting wealthier. They have more access. They spend less as a percentage of their wealth, and they're able to get access to deals that help them grow from there. Does that mean that shouldn't happen? I just think that's a lot of financial squibbling over things to make it sound like good sound bites for when you're trying to sell a book. Do we have debt levels? Yes. Are we in a recession? I don't know. There's a lot of indications we are, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we actually are. And as an investor, and you look at market valuations and where they are, a recession is probably necessary to get things in check, to weed out crap, to get people retrained so they're better workers and they can get better wages long term. There's never, ever, ever been a recession or a depression in which we didn't come out stronger later. Does that mean that's always going to happen? Just like we've always been able to pay our bills, right, Paul? Paul, we've always been able to pay our bills, and you're saying it could come to a time when we're not able to. Yeah, that's possible. I just look at recessions as a necessary part of what we have to do and go through in this country. Don't look at it as a negative. If you save properly, if you spend properly, you will be fine during recession, even if you lose your job. There are certain safety nets, but this is all the more reason why we need balanced budgets or surplus. That when we have recessions, the government can come in and support the people. But if we're already running on major deficits and then a recession occurs, those deficits will get worse because government revenues will decline. But the last time I checked, the social services will have to go up. This is just, I think they're overcomplicating it to sound smart. Listen, my opinion on Ray Dalio is kind of hit or miss on there. I I like some of the things he said. I also think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that he operates the world's largest hedge fund. He's a salesman at the end of the day. More power to him. Just like a lot of people say about me, I'm a salesperson too. In the sense of we have videos, we have software, etc. I get that. I get that argument. Um, but I look at things and say, hey, why try to overcomplicate things? Are we the strongest nation in the world? As of right now, we are. Are there other countries that are getting stronger and stronger? Yeah. Are there other countries that are going to be stronger economically than us? Probably. It's very difficult for countries to become and stay the most powerful economic forces. But look at Great Britain. 200 years ago, Great Britain was the number one economy in the world. Are they a crappy economy now? No, they're still a great economy. Are they a little bit bigger government than most people would like? Yeah, probably more than I would like. But at the end of the day, we go through cycles. I will say this, though, that if we keep increasing our debt faster than we increase our GDP, we're eventually going to have a problem. It's just math. That's all it is. There's nothing different. It's just math. Just taking it to what you're saying. If you increase your debt personally faster than your income is growing, eventually you're going to have a problem. Is it today? Is it tomorrow? Probably not. But eventually down the road, the pot will get hotter and hotter. And by the time you realize it's too hot, it will be too late. This is not some fudster, we're going down the tubes BS. This is just saying this is the reality of things. As an investor, your job is to try to take advantage of that. But I'm going to tell you right now, if we get to that point and stock markets crash pretty hard, or we have long periods of time where stocks are very low, there'll be a time when I'm making videos saying, guys, stocks are undervalued. And people in the chat and the comments will be, Paul, you always say stocks are undervalued. I'm like, well, that's weird because I was being criticized when I said stocks are overvalued, which they are today. Stocks are massively overvalued compared to history. And people would say, well, it's different because, well, okay, great. But we also have very high levels of debt government wise. We're not growing like we did 100 years ago. When we're a younger economy, are we still going to grow? Absolutely. Am I worried about population decline? And not as much as other people. I'm still not convinced that population decline is a bad thing, especially when it comes to resources and productivity. But these are things that make the rounds on YouTube as the world's falling apart, the world is ending. Just like Ray Dalio sitting here and saying he needs to sell a book. He wants to sell his book. It's a lead generator for his business because people can then invest in it. Guys, you can't control what the government does. You can only control what you do. And what you can do is spend less, save more. But I still believe that dollar cost averaging is a good way to hedge your bet. So if you want to learn more about dollar cost averaging, we have a great PDF free of charge. Click the link below, download the PDF. It's a great guide on dollar cost averaging. It's something everybody needs to have and also remember over and over again. It is pretty interesting that we all look at history and say stocks always go up, and they do. I think 50 years from now, stocks will be a lot higher than they are today. But we're also at record levels of valuation, things we didn't see in 2000. And we had 10 years of no growth from 2000 to 2010. So what is that? When we're double the valuation metrics we were before, what do the next 10 or 15 years look like? That is something where I'm going to say, hey guys, it's just math. The more you pay for something, the less your returns are going to be. And the more overvalued things are, the longer it'll take for valuations to get back to normal. How does that happen? I don't know. In the past, it's been long periods of no growth intermixed with a lot of crashes and peaks. Look what happened since April 1st this month. We're 2 weeks in and we've seen the market just go up and down like this. 7% up, 5% down, 6% up, 5% down. That's pretty tough, but there are some opportunities to buy some good companies, even at these valuation metrics, but you've got to be patient because successful investing isn't about what's up here, about what's in here. This time, it's not just about value investing. There's a bigger game being played, one that could shake the market in 2025. We're talking about forces behind the scenes, political strategy, debt pressure, and deliberate economic maneuvers. If the dots we're connecting are right, this crash isn't going to be random. So click the screen to watch the 2025 stock market crash is not an accident. Because if this theory that's out there holds up, the moves you make next could define the next decade of your financial future. Click the video on your screen. Thank you very much for your time.